Cost of Disconnecting from Russia by www.profitableinvestingtips.com. As evidence of atrocities by Russian forces in Ukraine mounts, it is leading to more and more sanctions. As nations and individual companies go forward, they need to consider the cost of disconnecting from Russia and the various ways in which they can ease the pain. As Russia continues its attempts to win in Ukraine by wholesale slaughter of civilians and destruction of infrastructure, it will be more and more difficult for countries and businesses to want to deal with Russia. We can expect a wholesale reshuffling of trade relationships. But before that reshuffling takes place, there will be a cost of disconnecting from Russia for everyone, including individual investors. Russia as a supplier of commodities. Senator John McCain was the one who first said that Russia was a large gas station pretending to be a country. Not only is Russia a major exporter of fossil fuels, they are also of critical importance in exporting fertilizers, wheat, corn, strategic minerals, nuclear reactors, iron, steel, and more. Statista lists Russian exports by value in U.S. dollars. Mineral fuels and oils, $141.92 billion. Precious metals, stones, pearls, $30.36 billion. Iron and steel, $16 billion. Cereals, $9.34 billion. Nuclear reactors, boilers, machinery, $8.3 billion. Wood and wood products, $8.2 billion. Fertilizers, $6.99 billion. Copper and copper products, $5.65 billion. Aluminum and aluminum products, $5.46 billion. The biggest source of revenue for Russia is in the realm of oil, natural gas, and coal. This is where the European Union finds itself in a bind, as they have allowed themselves to become so dependent of Russia for the sources of energy to run their societies and economies. However, just as important, or more so to some, are the cereals and fertilizers that Russia exports. Many nations in the Middle East, Asia, and Africa rely on Russia and Ukraine for their corn and wheat as well as their fertilizers. We wrote about the crisis that will arise if Ukraine has no harvest or is unable to ship its grains. The pain and civil chaos from food shortages will be greatly compounded as Russia threatens to cut off food and fertilizer supplies to nations that do not support its war in Ukraine. Wheat export, pain and profit. Russia accounts for 24% of world wheat exports, followed by Canada and the USA, contributing 25% together. France counts for 10%, Ukraine for 9%, Australia for 6.7%, and Argentina at 6.4%. To the extent that Ukraine cannot harvest this year's winter wheat crop or cannot bring it to market, that will drive the price up. Stored wheat could act as a buffer, but the two largest stockpiles are in India and China and are kept as emergency food reserves. Outside of these two nations, the U.S. has the largest wheat reserves at 27 million tons. The European Union has 13 million tons, and Russia has 8 million tons, according to Agricultural Magazine. Canadian and U.S. wheat farmers have their winter wheat crops in the ground and, barring awful weather, can expect historic wheat prices at harvest. Food as a weapon and food riots. As the war in Ukraine shifts to the east and south, it could turn into more set-piece battles instead of Ukraine beating the Russians with small-unit hit-and-run tactics. It could drag on for months, if not years. As the prospect of a prolonged war emerges, Putin is seen meeting with leaders from the Middle East, making the point that allies of Russia will get food and enemies will starve. The cost of disconnecting from Russia will include whatever chaos Putin is able to cause to advance his goal of reinventing the Soviet Union. The fallout from this situation goes far beyond U.S. companies pulling out of franchise agreements in Russia to provide opportunities for Wyoming coal producers like Peabody Energy and wheat farmers in North Dakota and Manitoba. For more insights and useful information about investments and investing, visit www ProfitableInvestingTips.com.